Welcome, folks, to the 10th episode of No Conference for Old Men, the podcast where three old guys are talking Houston Cougars basketball with a bit of Big 12 coverage added in as well. We're also now proud members of the GoCoogs.com network, the group that provides the deepest and broadest coverage of Houston Cougars content around. And we're also now done with all non-conference games this season and have managed to get through the slate unscathed, at least record-wise at 13-0. We've unfortunately had a season-ending injury to super sixth man Terrence Arsenault and lingering knee issues with one of our mainstays, Juwan Roberts. And now our initial foray into Big 12 conference play begins with West Virginia on January 6th. We're also at the point in the season where we will begin a regular weekly cadence with the podcast with at least one weekly conference game on the slate the rest of the way. So today we are again fully staffed with Tom Lidiak, Bill Walker, and myself, Steve Chang, for this week's episode. And we'll start off with our summary of our final two non-conference games played by our Houston Cougars, identify some trends that we saw in these last two games that might give us a hint as to how Coach has adjusted to the loss of Arsenault and the injury to Roberts, and then move into a deep preview of the West Virginia game coming up this week. Okay, so let's get right into it, gentlemen, in recapping the two games played. Let's start with the Texas State game. So, Tom, what are your coach's thoughts on our 72-37 win over Texas State?
A couple of things I got out of the Texas State game. The big story was Juwan going out with that contusion to his either knee or his thigh, holding Texas State to 37 points. Just a tremendous job. You know, U of H, they're the best team I've ever seen at contesting every dribble, every pass, every shot. You have to give Texas State, they're a scrappy team. Give them some credit for, giving us some resistance on offense. We didn't look the greatest on offense. Just had a lot of trouble, handling the ball, I thought. But, once again, you give credit to Texas State. Like I said, they were scrappy. They were kind of in our faces. Having said that, we still won by, looks like, 35 points?
Yep.
So, yeah, those are the things I got out of the Texas State game.
Okay, great. How about you, Bill? What'd you think?
Well, I didn't see the game. I was up in the tundra up in Milwaukee. But first half, certainly we didn't shoot the ball well. But you know what? So what? The defense is just, as Tom alluded to, it's just sickening. They shot 29% from the field, 13% from three. What's crazy, once again, 27 turnovers. The turnovers that we're creating are unbelievable. I heard someone mention something about, Texas State out-rebounded us.
They did.
I think that's correct. Well, the fact of the matter is, if you're throwing the ball away on virtually every possession, it's kind of hard to get shots off, and there aren't going to be any opportunities for rebounds. We didn't shoot well, which gave them opportunities, at least in the first half, but 27 turnovers it's unreal. And the defense, giving up under 40 points a game in Division I college basketball is crazy. I played on a state championship team. In high school, we had 8-minute quarters, no shot clock, and we rarely gave up under 40 points. And if Penn not hit a shot at the end of the game last night, they would have been under 40 as well. The defense has just been unbelievable. Their best player, as I had mentioned in the previous podcast, Gums, who's supposed to be the next great player at Texas State for whatever that means. He did lead them in scoring with a whopping 7 points, only to fall short by one of the 8 turnovers he committed. So, that's, I guess, what the next great player at Texas State will do against us. Yeah, I thought, at least from what I saw, it looks like, Wilson played a good game. And once again, it's hard to gauge everything because these teams aren't very good. But Wilson played a pretty good game. Francis shot well. And Ramon looked like he had some stats. And, these are in basically about 20 minutes for each player, close to it. So it looks like they played well. And, we did what we needed to do.
Yeah, I completely agree. If we look at the starters, again, we had Shed, Cryer, Sharp, Roberts, and Francis in the starting lineup. We dominated from the get-go, especially defensively, and won every quartile of the game when you look more deeply into each half. Texas State did fight hard, as you both had mentioned, but could not get anything going offensively and couldn't show any resistance inside the paint as we had our way inside as well. We only got 8 minutes out of Roberts due to the knee-related issues, as you both highlighted, but still were able to shoot almost 54% from two-point range for the game. Emmanuel Sharp and Javier Francis were actually the stars, which was great to see. Sharp with 17 points. He was only 2 of 10 from the field, but he made 11 of 11 free throw attempts, taking it hard to the basket, and was a player box score plus minus a plus 17.9 when on the court. Francis with 13 points. He was 5 for 5 from the field and was a plus 19.4 player box score plus minus. And we're going to need that, especially with Roberts' troubling knee issues going into Big 12 play. Now, from a deeper analytics perspective, and since we now have some new listeners joining us, I'll provide, again, some context around how we view advanced analytics going into conference play. KenPom is our main source for analysis, with a handful of interesting stats from Haslametrics and Bart Torvik mixed in as well. We view a team being great in an area if that stat is ranked top 40 in the country. But on the flip side, it's a serious weakness if it ranks 175th or worse in the country, all with the intent of making the NCAA tourney in mind. So if we look at this game, on offense, our effective field goal percentage was below standard at 46.7%, where last year we were in the 52% range. And that's against a good defensive team in Texas State. We turned the ball over a bit more than normal, especially in the first half. Ended the game at 17.16%, which is still great. Our standard last year was at 15.4% from a turnover perspective. And we offensive rebounded near standard at 35.1%. Now on D, we played a stellar game all across the board, limiting Texas State to 31.1% effective field goal percentage. And we were exceptional last year at 42.7%. We forced them to 40% turnovers. I mean, that is unreal. It's almost half of their possessions they turned the ball over. And we were one of the top teams at 21% last year in KenPom. We limited their three-point percentage to 13.33% versus our standard of 27.9% last year. And we blocked a staggering almost 27% of their two-point shots. Incredible display of defensive disruption as we get ready for Big 12 play. So then the next game we had was Penn. That was last night. And just as a reminder for folks, Penn actually beat Villanova earlier this year. So these are no slouches. This was the final non-conference game. Bill, what are your thoughts on our gutsy 81-42 win against Penn?
Well, you mentioned, Steve, that Penn beat Villanova. Penn also was within one possession in the second half at Kentucky before losing by, I think, 15. Yes. So they played two good games. And I actually had, because we didn't preview this, I'd actually had several people come up to me and say, what do you think about the Penn game? And my response was, do not be fooled by the Villanova win or the Kentucky game. They shot extremely well in both of those games. Their big guy, Spinoso, he's not your typical low post player. He gets the ball up around the free throw line, top of the key, and he finds their shooters. And they're an extraordinary shooting team. They're a 40% three-point shooting team. The thing is, they've not played a defense remotely close to ours. Worse, they're not very athletic. So it plays right into what we do defensively. And they were going to have trouble against us. And I told people we were going to win that game easily. Spinoso, their leading assist man, had 1 assist. He had 7 turnovers because we were doubling him. I saw him throw a couple behind the back passes right to our players. He's a good player, but he was just overwhelmed. Their best, one of the top 10 scorers in NCAA is Slacker. He sprained his ankle and he was in a boot the rest of the game, so he didn't play. But he played 6 minutes. He missed a shot, he missed a 3, and he committed 2 turnovers. They just hadn't come up against a team this athletic, and it showed. They committed more turnovers than they made shots, and it was no contest. Unfortunately, they're the son of the former coach of the 76ers.
That's right.
Brett Brown, his son, who plays for Penn, hit a wild 3 to end the shutout when it was 18-0. But Tugler, I thought, played pretty well. I thought he was very solid. I guess we'll say solid. He scored inside. He struggled a little bit with Spinoso in the second half. Spinoso took him off the dribble a couple of times. And you know what? Tugler's a freshman. He's playing an older guy, experienced guy. It's going to happen. But Tugler overall, I thought played a very solid game. And I thought some of the other guys, Ramon, Wilson, Dunn, the guys that haven't played as much in some of the tighter games and maybe haven't stepped up, I thought they all played positively. They all played 20-plus minutes. And, we were just significantly better. Like I said, had they not hit a shot right at the end of the game, they would have had 39 points. Once again, not making it to 40, which is a huge testament to our defense.
Yeah, just incredible stuff. I actually saw a tweet today. I don't remember who was the one that actually tweeted it, but the KenPom defensive statistics for this year's Cougars team, if we can keep this up now, obviously it's so early, right, in the season, would be the greatest statistical KenPom defensive efficiency rating since 2020. And I think that's the beginning of KenPom. So we're truly playing at an elite level. Now, there's still a lot of games to play and the toughest part of our slate in the Big 12 as well. So we'll see how well the defense stacks up with a much tougher schedule the rest of the way. Now, Tom, what do you think? What was your view from a coach's perspective of the Penn game?
Last night, looking at the Penn game, I think the story again is our defense. You guys alluded to this. You covered it already. But, just suffocating. Like I said earlier, every dribble, every pass, every shot is contested. If there's a breakdown on defense, there's accountability because Kelvin will yank your butt and get you on the bench. Penn ran what's called zoom action, and that's just a down screen into dribble handoff. That's usually they have their 5-man. He's kind of like a point center, similar to a Princeton offense. And their big man, their 5-man will dribble handoff from a guy receiving a down screen, and we just defended that. I don't see how you could defend it even better. I think there was one time where we went under a screen and they hit a 3, and of course that player came out. I can't remember who it was, but Kelvin has that accountability built into our culture. You either get it done or you become an assistant coach. A lot of people want to talk about our offense. It's kind of like a broken record. Yeah, we could play better on offense, but we're never going to win any contests if you're looking at aesthetics.
Yeah.
And Kelvin Sampson's teams have never been pretty on offense, so people can just forget about that. Our culture is built on defending, rebounding, and then being unselfish on offense. And we still scored 81 points. 81. That's pretty darn good. So I'm not as concerned as some other people are about our offense. It is what it is. And that's not our sole focus. There's a lot of teams that are more offensive centric, but they don't win as many games.
Yep.
And they lose to the tournament, like in the first round. I'm not saying Arizona, but I'm saying there. You got Arizona, you got Purdue. Yeah, you look pretty. You score a lot of points. It's going to come down to defending and rebounding. And then we got enough guys that can hit big shots. LJ, Jamal, Emmanuel, Roberts. These guys can all knock down shots when we need them. So, I'm not worried about that. As far as from an X and O standpoint, without Juwan, without TA, I didn't see a whole lot of difference in sets on offense. We still kind of ran this little set. Kelvin calls the passing game to get into our offense. He's used another one. He's probably had it forever. Used it at Oklahoma to try to get a post up. So I didn't see any big difference, any difference on the X's and O's. I did like an inbounds play underneath, baseline out of bounds underneath. We get done at the elbow. I really like that.
Yeah.
Dunn gets the ball at the elbow, and everybody else just kind of gets the heck out of the way. And the one thing I like about Dunn is how low he plays on offense. There's an old saying in sports, low man wins. Well, he gets low when he drives, when he's in triple threat, and I really like that little set. But that's what it came out of the Penn game. Penn was averaging a bunch of points, and
80.
Penn might have hit a lot of shots against Kentucky. They might have hit a lot of shots against Villanova, but you know what? Us three could probably hit some of those shots if we're wide open. Of course they're going to hit shots when they're wide open.
Yeah.
I think they used to do a study. This is like 30 years ago. Uncontested shots were like 62%. Contested shots 38%, and those are old stats, but I'm sure they're somewhere similar stat wise. So did a great job last night. Looking forward to what we look like in conference.
Yeah, just to emphasize your point as well, Tom, around our offense. As much as maybe some fans complain about maybe how stagnant at times we get, or how it isn't as pretty as some of the other teams, we are the 17th ranked adjusted offensive efficiency in KenPom, right, in the nation. So it's not like we're slouches. Now, granted, we may not do it with, a bunch of pretty backdoor passes, and it's more reliant on our offensive rebounding, but we are still, in the end result, we're ranked 17th most efficient offense in the nation. So it's really, really difficult to complain about that, right? Especially when you pair it with the number one defense by far in the country, right?
Well, Calvin even mentioned in his press conference last night that, for instance, in the Texas State game, Sharp went, as you mentioned, Steve, he went 2 of 9 from 3, but Calvin had said that he could have easily hit 8 of those shots. They're just, It's one of those nights where the shots didn't fall. And do we have the absolute purest shooting team? No, but we've got good shooters. And,
we do.
There are going to be nights when Sharp hits 7 of 9 threes. There are going to be nights when he hits 2 of 9. But the thing is, and Calvin said, you can't control that. He can't control that. But he sure as hell can control the effort on defense, the aggressiveness to the boards. And that's something that you could do successfully every single game. And that's exactly what we've been doing the entire season.
Yeah, no, you're spot on, Bill. I mean, for the Penn game, no surprise. Our defense dominated and we won the game handily, right? 81-42. Key for probably the three of us watching the game, because the game was over pretty early on, but was just watching how we played to get some perspective on how we were going to be playing going into Big 12 play, right? Since Arsenault's injury was still pretty fresh and he's out for the season. Roberts this week dealing with knee issues, didn't play at all. Part of the questions that we were wondering was Ramon Walker and Malik Wilson going to take advantage of the minutes they were going to get? Were we still going to try to play 1 big and 4 out when we were down Arsenault? And then, Damian Dunn, we know he needs to be a key player. Was he going to have a breakout performance before conference play began? Now, when we looked at the starters, we had Shed, Cryer, Sharp, and then for the first time, Tugler in the starting lineup with Francis at the 5. The big news, and I was excited to hear, was that we were resting Juwan Roberts and starting Tugler in his place. Given the opponent, we were able to play with an 8-man rotation with no one playing more than 30 minutes. Shed and Tugler were actually the stars, so I'm going to differ from you guys. I actually thought Tugler had a phenomenal game. And if you look at the advanced analytics, Shed, who had 14 points, 6 of 8 from the field, 4 assists in 27 minutes. And then when you looked at JoJo, 13 points, 5 of 7 from the field, 7 rebounds, 2 blocks, 2 steals, and he was not in foul trouble, right? Though Shed was statistically the MVP of the game from an advanced analytics perspective with KenPom, it was a big statement game for Tugler in getting the start. He was very patient, not overwhelmed by his first start as a Cougar, only had 2 fouls for the course of the game while still being his usual disruptive self on D. Great sign going into Big 12 play. And really to confirm that assertion that Shed and Tugler were the top 2 players of the game, Shed was a player box score plus minus 26.8 for the game. And Tugler was a close second at a plus 22.4 player box score plus minus. The next closest guy was Cryer at plus 13. So statistically, when he was on the court, he was making winning plays. And then when you look at Dunn, the guy that we've been really concerned about and wanting to get on the rails, I thought it may not have been a breakout game, but also played much better this game and didn't seem as indecisive as in previous games. But he did have 11 points, 6 rebounds, and 3 steals in 20 minutes for a very effective stint in the lineup. As you dig into the advanced analytics from KenPom, on offense, our effective field goal percentage played just above standard at 53.8%, protected the ball extremely well at 11.36% turnover rate versus where we're at roughly a little bit over 15% last year. And we offensive rebounded to standard at 45.24%. And that was actually even playing with a very small lineup at times of Shed, Cryer, Sharp, and Wilson, along with Francis at times. That's a tiny lineup around Francis. And yet we were still able to effectively defend an offensive rebound. And to top it off, we shot 43.75% from 3 using this quick, smaller lineup. Right now on D, we played above standard, limiting Penn to 38.9% effective field goal percentage and limiting their 3-point shooting percentage to 26.9%. But we've also forced them to 35.36% turnover rate, which is that's over a third of their possessions were turnovers. We blocked a staggering 26.3% of their 2-point shots. So that's over a quarter of their 2-point shots, and basically another stellar defensive effort for the number 1 defensive team in the country heading into conference play. And arguably without our best defensive front court player in Jawan Roberts. So a great win for our Cougars. Tugler is becoming a primetime player for us. Dunn is finally getting more comfortable, and we had no injuries. So I'm actually feeling pretty good about the program going into our first Big 12 game against West Virginia. Now, before we get into the preview for West Virginia, I just wanted to throw it out there for you two. Now that we've seen these last 2 games, what are you seeing in terms of, let's say, from even a Houston Cougars Coach Sampson perspective? Is he changing anything up heading into conference play, as well as maybe some thoughts around the teams as we've seen the other Big 12 teams go through non-con play and kind of who to look out for? Is it still the same teams that you guys had thought going into the season, or are you zeroing in on a few other teams that we hadn't anticipated? Tom, why don't you go first?
I was going to let Bill go first.
Okay.
Anyway, I want to hear what Bill has to say first, and then I'll probably piggyback on him.
Okay. Well, in terms of U of H, I think we're a little bit quicker than maybe we've been in the past with the defense, agree. With the doubling, with the rotations defensively, and I think that's kind of been a key to the turnovers. The defense has just been. I mean, we've always been really good defensively. I mean, obviously that's Kelvin's trademark, but creating the turnovers has just been outstanding, and that's one of the big differences I see. I think we're going to be fine offensively. I hope people don't begin to freak out and claim that the sky is falling when we lose our first Big 12 game, because we are going to. It's been almost 50 years since Indiana went undefeated. It's not going to happen. Kansas, I think, lost 5 conference games in winning the Big 12 last year. So we're going to lose. I mean, I'm looking at the schedule coming up, and Steve, you mentioned looking at as we're heading into the Big 12. I mean, the month of January, where we've got a 3-game stretch at BYU, at Texas, at Kansas. We're also at Iowa State. It's 8 games in January. We could go 5-3, and hopefully not. But if we do, it's not the end of the world.
Yep.
We're playing a significantly tougher schedule than we did any time in the past, at least the recent past. I mean, we're playing good teams, and it's going to happen whether we're playing well or not, and it's just the way it goes. So I just hope people aren't ready to, I don't know, call for not a new coach, but just overreact because we lose a couple of games, 3 games. Look, we're in a toughest conference, and it's going to happen. But God, I mean, the team just looks really, really good, especially at the defensive end going into it. And teams just don't face defenses like this. So a lot of these teams are going to be facing it for the first time. And yeah, I'm looking forward to that. In terms of the teams, I think, you guys had liked Kansas, Baylor, Texas, and of course us. I think the fifth team there is going to be BYU, which
yes, you were right.
Who I've liked forever.
Yes.
And then I think it's the next four are going to be Kansas State, Iowa State, Oklahoma, who's off to a good start, but they may not be that great. And Cincinnati's off to a good start, but that's probably going to come to a bit of an end as well. And then everyone else is going to be down toward the bottom. Yes, I looked at the schedules for all of the teams, and some of them have some good wins. Kansas over Connecticut, and there's some good wins. But God, there are some really bad losses on here as well. I mean, Oklahoma State losing to Abilene Christian, West Virginia, who we're about to talk about, losing to Radford and Monmouth. There's been some pretty spotty play so far, and once again, it's early. It's everyone's for the most part are playing teams that they can beat. They're building up the records and everything. But I like where we sit heading into the Big 12.
Nice. How about you, Tom? What are your thoughts?
Bill mentioned the difference with when we go to the 4-guard lineup, as far as like rotations and all that. When you sub a big out and put a smaller player in there, you're going to, the advantage, the trade-off is you're getting more quickness in there. And deflections lead to steals. What's interesting about how we turn teams over is, we pressure the ball, but we really don't pick them up at half court. Probably pick them up around, Fertitta Center doesn't have a volleyball line, but if it did, we kind of pick them up at the volleyball line about 30, 32, 33 feet from the basket. We don't deny passes to the wing, one pass away, we don't deny. So you're not getting steals there. And that's what makes it amazing is how many turnovers we get teams to commit. Deflections lead to steals. We get some on the monster, get some guys passing out of the monster, and we get deflections and steals there. So you're going to have a trade-off there. You're not going to have as much rim protection when you take a big out. So you're going to have to make it up somewhere, and that's usually turning teams over a little bit more. We mentioned about going into the Big 12 and having some losses. I think my prediction, I thought we were going to go like 12-6. You look at UConn, they won the national championship last year, but in the regular season, they finished fourth in the Big East. So, like Bill said, people can't just freak out if we lose like 2 games in a row. It's highly possible that can happen. When you look at overall schedule, we're looking at West Virginia game. West Virginia is not as good as A&M, Dayton, or Xavier, in my opinion. They might be better than Oklahoma State or UCF. But West Virginia will be better than most of the teams we played so far. It's a home game, so that gives us the advantage. But like I said earlier, I'm just looking forward to playing in a so-called big boy conference.
Yeah, exciting.
And seeing how Coach Sampson's system and style of play matches up with other teams. I do think Kansas is not as good as I thought they'd be at the first of the year. There's some teams that are better than I thought they were. The Bills team, BYU, I was totally wrong on that one. I was totally wrong on Oklahoma. But then maybe again, when the Big 12 conference season starts, they come down to earth a little bit. We'll probably know a little bit about that team. They play Iowa State in the first Big 12 game. We'll see how that one goes. But probably after about 6, 7, 8 games, we're probably going to get a good idea of how the conference stacks up.
Okay. Hey, so guys, before I get into the analytics view of the program, I wanted to throw a question out to the two of you. We've sung the praises of the defensive effort for this year's Cougars team. Do you believe this is potentially the best defensive team that we've had here in the Sampson era?
I'll go first one on this, Bill. I think so. Originally, I was thinking it'd be tough to beat the team that had Galen and Corey.
Yep. Love that team.
That team was really good defensively. That team, I think, Coach Sampson, he doesn't believe in overachieving. He doesn't believe in overachieving. He believes that whatever you do, you can always do more. So there's never overachieving. But if you want to take a look at Galen, that Corey team, that team probably came as close to overachieving as you can. They were scrappy, they took charges, very good rebounding team. I think this team is better simply because we just have, I think, better players, more athletic players. So we're playing the same scrappy style, but with a little bit quicker players.
How about you, Bill? What do you think?
I think it's too early to tell. I think once we get
got to take a stand now. We're into January.
No, I'll believe me, I'll comment on it. I'll talk. But I think it's too early. I think we're pretty athletic on the front line, despite only having 3 players. So when Tugler comes over to double team, or if one of the other bigs comes over to double team Tugler's man, as soon as the ball, assuming it's not a turnover, and so far that's a huge assumption because we do create so many, but once the ball moves, he moves. I was watching Javier last night. He was moving from the double teams well. And granted, it's a little different because it was Spinoza who's out toward the free throw line when he's got the ball. But, that's even further that they've got to move to cover somebody else that may not have been covered or move toward the ball. I love the movement. I think we're transitioning to get to the open players. I saw there were a couple threes and Sharp wasn't as quick to them, and Calvin pulled him out and got on him pretty well last night in the first half. But overall, we're moving so well. We're not allowing open threes that I've seen sometime in the past. Think back to the Alabama game last year at Fertitta Center, where they moved the ball well out of double teams and hit open players who were open and hit threes against us when they made that comeback. I don't see as much of that this year. I think we're moving well, but once again, the schedule is going to get tougher, and it's going to be a lot more demanding. So that's why I'm saying the jury's a little bit out on whether this is the best. I think it absolutely could be. Yeah, absolutely. Every sign points toward it potentially being the best defense, but it's still early and competition's about to go up.
Yeah, no, I'm in complete agreement with you. I think the unknown for us is it's the first time we're playing a Big 12 slate, so we don't know how it's going to hold up. But I'm with you guys as well. Statistically speaking, it's a pretty incredible display in the non-conference on the defensive end so far. And Cryer's been a pleasant surprise playing hard-nosed D at the point of attack along with Shed. So he's really adjusted well. And as you had highlighted, Bill, as well, the foot movement, especially at our 5 position, I think is the best that it's been. We've just got longer, better athletes. Even Tugler as a freshman, I'm amazed at how quickly he recovers. Basically at the top of the key and then moving back to cover his man. He's and with his long arms, it's just been a really nice display. And I think we're only going to get better, quite honestly, as the year goes on. And so, looking statistically for this team heading into conference, we're going to continue to play to our culture with heavy emphasis on D and offensive rebounding, like always. Lineup wise, with Arsenal out, I do expect us to try to at least play a more traditional lineup the rest of the way with 2 of Roberts, Francis, and Tugler in the lineup, unless we hit foul trouble, where we'll see perhaps Ramon Walker play some small ball 4. But the most intriguing lineup that I saw this last game was that 4 true guards, all 6'2" or under, playing with either Francis or Tugler. And especially if we have to play long stretches to manage Juwan Roberts' minutes, we may be forced to play a bit more of that type of lineup moving forward. We saw a swarming D, great ball movement on O, and obviously great shooting with that lineup. Question is, can we defend against the more skilled, bigger lineups in the Big 12 with 4 true guards for extended periods of time? I do also expect to see some more consciously getting our bigs involved in some post-ups inside to initiate the offense. We saw a little bit of that these last 2 games as well, with both Javier and Tugler getting some post-ups. And perhaps that's just to keep the opposing teams honest. or draw some fouls on other bigs, slowing things down a bit since we're a little bit thinner on the bench, and open things up a bit more for our shooters. Kind of like how we played after injuries ravaged our team 2 seasons ago, and we got, Josh Carlton more looks inside. So we'll see, because the real bullets start flying this coming week with West Virginia on the slate. So now let's get into the game preview for the West Virginia UH game. Tom, what do you think from a coach's perspective?
Like I said earlier, you look at West Virginia, probably not as good as A&M, Dayton, or Xavier. I can't remember if we were talking about this before we started recording, but Josh Eilert, he's been an assistant for Bob Huggins for I don't know how many years. He's a first-time head coach, so you just assume that he's gonna do what Coach Huggins did. Coach Huggins, was always wanted to be a tough team, tough mentally, tough physically. So I'm sure that's what West Virginia is going to try to do, kind of a mirror version of us. Yeah, I just don't see West Virginia beating us at home. They will be better than some of the teams that we played, but yeah, I'm just excited to see our guys play and against a Big 12 team.
Awesome. How about from a player's perspective, Phil? What are your thoughts on the West Virginia game?
Well, yeah, Eilert's been he was an assistant to Huggins for 17 years. He said that the defense, he said this a couple of times that I've heard, the defense is going to remain the same, a hard-nosed pressure defense as it was with Huggins, but he wants to speed things up considerably offensively. And, so far at 5-8, obviously some mixed results. Potentially their best win so far is against Bellarmine, who they beat by 4 points. I mean, They have not had a good win yet. They lost. They have had a couple of, I guess you could say, okay losses. They lost last night in overtime at home to Ohio State. They also lost to Virginia by 2. But Monmouth beat them by 8. Radford beat them. So this is it's an interesting team. They lost all 5 starters from last year. They lost their top 6 scorers. So it's a brand new team.
It is.
They brought in, one guy who's going to be irrelevant, who's probably their best player, Jesse Edwards, a 6'11" center from Syracuse. He's out, so no concern there. Kirk Kriisa is a very good point guard, 6'3", transferred in from Arizona. I don't think that we're going to see this team turn the ball over as much as some of the previous teams because Kriisa is very good. He's a very good ball handler. I think it's going to be a little bit more like it's been in the past. We're still going to turn them over and probably turn them over a fair amount, but they'll get off some more shots and we'll get a lot more rebounds. So I think it maybe reverts back toward the mean. The other guy is Raekwon Battle, and he started his career at Washington. He's played recently at Montana. He's a 6'5" 2 guard. He's led them in scoring the last 3 games. He's a scorer, and he's a good player. So we'll see what happens there. As I mentioned offline, Eilert said that he fully expected a top half Big 12 finish this year. I've got a 2-word response to that, and that is good luck.
Yeah,
they do have some talent with Battle and Kriisa and Edwards when he comes back, and I think they're going to be a lot more competitive in the Big 12 than some people think. I think they're going to be better than Tech. I think they may be better than TCU, but we'll see how that plays out. But this is a game where this should be a 20 to 25 point win.
Yeah, statistically, it suggests that as well. I mean, if you look at advanced analytics, UH is still number 1 in KenPom. West Virginia comes in at number 123. If you do a comparison, we're number 17th in adjusted offensive efficiency, while they're coming in at number 100 in adjusted defensive efficiency. On the flip side, we're the number 1 team in the country by quite a margin on adjusted defensive efficiency. And West Virginia comes in at number 180 in terms of adjusted offensive efficiency. West Virginia is a bad shooting team. They're 287th in effective field goal percentage, and they're a bad offensive rebounding team at number 219th in offensive rebound percentage. and that's a bad combo trying to score against our Cougs. Then you match that up with our number one effective field goal percentage defense that defends every shot, our number one team ranking defense in block percentage as well as steal percentage, and it's going to be a long night offensively for West Virginia. On the other side, West Virginia is only middle of the road good at defending shooters, coming at number 81 at defensive effective field goal percentage. And rebound wise, defensive rebounding, they come in at number 174, so they're okay. And they're terrible at forcing turnovers, ranking number 332 in KenPom. So as you had highlighted, Bill, based on metrics, this should be a 20-point type of win. But it's really hard to predict, right? Because Battle's just coming in, Farrakhan's just coming in. They've played, 3 games at this point. Crease is starting to understand the program. And then, of course, you throw out Edwards because he's injured for the next few games. Strictly statistics-wise, we should win by 20 plus, but I'm expecting maybe a 12-point win with a concerted effort in trying to get guys like Damian Dunn going as we get into the meat of our Big 12 play. So we'll see. I'm definitely excited. Our very first Big 12 game ever. I'm definitely going to be flying in for that game. So can't wait to see how things unfold. So that's it for episode 10 of No Conference for Old Men podcast. Hope you all enjoyed it. And again, would really appreciate it if folks would follow, subscribe, or collect our podcast, depending on your podcast platform of choice. We are also now available on the GoCoogs.com website under the podcast section, or SoundCloud if that's your preferred route to digest the content that way. We appreciate the continued support and loyalty from all. It keeps us going and continues to reinforce our view that there's an appetite out there for the type of deep college hoops insight we're trying to provide for Cougars and Big 12 fans alike. Also, please give us a follow on our Twitter account, No Conference for Old Men. Thank you all again for listening, and episode number 11 should come out after the West Virginia game. So please be on the lookout to listen and download the next episode. Thanks again, everyone.